I think it's important to note, though, the vast majority of this project, the scope and the assessment was done under Canada's already world-leading regulatory system. There was a pause button for 3 months earlier in the spring to accept some more studies on fisheries management and wildlife and habitat management. But the vast majority of the project was scoped out and assessed, and the approval recommendation based on the assessment done on the previous system. I only mention this because it's concerning, because the federal Liberal government, even as recently as yesterday, you'll note the Parliamentary Secretary in the House of Commons said they're in the midst of launching a review of the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency and also a so-called modernization of the NEB. The problem is that signals potentially further changes, measures, steps, hoops, and application processes that all other energy projects will have to go through. But if the recommendation was solid enough in the government's assessment on the Pacific Northwest LNG project to approve it, as we urge them to do so, then I believe they're putting other energy projects at risk by signaling potential continued uncertainty and changes.
But part of the argument to overhaul the NEB is because it's not equipped to deal with concerns of Aboriginal groups and environmental concerns. So isn't that part of the issue?
First Nations consultation has always been part of the regulatory approval process, and the NEB has consistently worked on improving consultation with First Nations, with impacted communities, with impacted stakeholders. That's part of the issue. What the federal Liberal government has done is consistently undermined the credibility and the legitimacy of Canada's regulatory system by acting as if there's something untoward or insufficient. But the point is that they've just approved a major project, which we support, we urge them to, we applaud them for doing that, under the pre-existing system, that they say they want to overhaul, that they imply.
But they weren't the only ones undermining it. Lots of people were undermining it.
I think the Liberal government, they ran in the campaign, and they consistently have stated since getting elected that they believe the system was broken and that there are these gaps, and so they talk about these changes that they need to fix. They've never been very specific about it. Even the 5 measures they've noted about consulting with impacted communities, about consulting with First Nations, about taking interventions from concerned stakeholders. Those are all already and historically have been done in Canada's regulatory system. And in fact, state-owned energy producing countries around the world, as well as private energy project proponents globally, have come to Canada to adopt our standards and our regulatory practices literally for decades. The new aspect of the energy approval process that they've recommended, which is very concerning, is this potential condition about adding upstream emissions assessment to pipeline projects in particular. That's concerning because it's a bar that no other major infrastructure in Canada is held to.
Can I just ask
And it doesn't, of course, apply to standards for foreign oil that don't meet the same environmental standards that Canada has, which we import.
If this thing ever gets off the ground, what will it do for the economy if it gets off the ground?
It'll be great for jobs. It will allow Canada to play an important role globally in being a source of clean energy to the rest of the world and offsetting major emitting countries like, for example, China. But time is of the essence in these approvals, both for proponents for capital planning, but also in the case of LNG, of course, contracts with Asian markets and commodity price pressures are challenges for the proponents. That's why it's timely approval.
Last question for me. You call it clean energy, but environmentalists say it's the equivalent of putting 1 million cars on the road. So which is it?
I think that the various inputs and opinions in the regulatory process are important. That discussion has to take place. But liquefied natural gas is a cutting-edge leading line of clean, sustainable, responsible energy, and Canada should be proud to provide that to the world.